show, and time now for another edition of Straight Talk. Straight Talk is brought to you by TriStar Training. All right, joining me on the phone is a candidate for the state Senate seat vacated by Jim Tracy back in November. And, of course, we have the primary election ongoing. Early voting is done here in Marshall County, but the actual election for you to come out and vote is this Thursday. Joe Carr is our guest on Straight Talk. He's a candidate for that Senate seat. And, Mr. Carr, thank you for joining us. Good morning.
Good morning, John Jay. Thank you for having me, and I'm going to enjoy being here with you this morning.
Well, I look forward to it as well, and we'll see what we can pick out of your brain this morning.
Okay.
First of all, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where you've been, what you've done, your family, and all that kind of stuff.
Sure. I'm 60 years old. Will be 60 in March. I grew up in Middle Tennessee, specifically the eastern half of Rutherford County, most of my life since I was a child. My father was a fighter pilot in the Air Force. My father is a 5-6 generation Texan. My mom is a 6-7 generation Tennessean. So when my father retired from the Air Force, John Michael, in 1971, we moved back to a little community called Christiana, Tennessee, which is in the southeast corner of Rutherford County. And I helped my grandfather on his grade B milk farm at that time. And so I grew up for the rest of my days pretty much on a farm. And now my wife and my son and I have 3 children. 2 of them are grown, but the 3 of us have a 95-acre farm in the northeast corner of Las Casas. I have started and owned and sold and operated 2 different engineering companies with offices throughout the United States. So I've got a successful track record as a businessman. I'm now, like I said, have a 95-acre farm where my wife and I are retired. And in 2008, your listeners may know that, or may not know, but in 2008, I ran for the Tennessee General Assembly and was elected. I was the first Republican elected out of the 48th legislative district to the Tennessee General Assembly since Reconstruction. And so I was a member of the Tennessee General Assembly as a state representative for 6 years. In 2014, I retired. I decided not to run for re-election, but instead ran against, as some of your listeners may know, against Lamar Alexander. And we won Marshall County against Senator Alexander and narrowly lost statewide. So that's a little bit about me. I'm a strong constitutional conservative, strongly pro-life. My wife and I are adoptive parents. I'm strong on the Second Amendment. I believe in smaller, more efficient government. I've started businesses. I've passed bills that help small businesses. And so I think on that basis alone, I think I would make an excellent choice as your state senator.
Now, with a background running a farm and an engineering background, what drew you to politics?
My wife and I have always been interested in politics. We've always been involved as informed citizens. But quite honestly, my involvement came from a challenge from the local Republican local party chairman needing somebody to step up and run against a long-term, well-established incumbent Democrat, John Hood, in 2006. So I actually ran in 2006. I lost to Representative Hood narrowly. And then in 2008, he decided not to run again. And so we ran and we won. And like I said, we served 3 terms until 2014.
All right. Now, you describe yourself as a constitutional conservative, and
Yes,
I think that probably could be said for most all Republican candidates in Tennessee. What differentiates you from your opposition in this election?
Well, I think there are several things. Number one, just because you say you're a conservative doesn't mean you're a conservative. And I point to several things. Number one, when I was in the Tennessee General Assembly, John Michael, I wrote and sponsored and passed most, if not all, of Tennessee's illegal immigration bills. As a matter of fact, in 2009, my first year in the Tennessee General Assembly, I wrote and passed the nation's first no sanctuary city law, the very law that stopped Nashville from passing 2 ordinances back in 2017, establishing itself as a no sanctuary city. I wrote and passed Tennessee's E-Verify law. I helped write and pass the repeal of the inheritance tax, which was devastating to farmers and small businesses. I helped write and pass the repeal of Tennessee's gift tax, which was nothing more than double taxation on those who earned that income, but yet were being taxed again when they decided to give it to a loved one, a family member, or a friend. So I've been heavily involved in writing and passing and implementing strong constitutional conservative legislation in Tennessee, whereas my opponent, he has basically had his experience as a businessman, which is significant, but it's not in this election. It's not enough when you've got a choice between a businessman, a strong businessman with a proven record of being a constitutional conservative.
All right, now I'm a little worried right now because this election has gotten into personalities, and some of these campaign ads that we're hearing are starting to get down and dirty. Can you discuss that a little bit?
I'm glad you asked that. Mr. Reeves, my opponent, and I have known each other for a very long time. He's a deacon in his church. His consultant is a pastor in the church, and his treasurer is a minister in the church. And I reached out to them 6 weeks ago, and I said, let's keep this campaign, because we're all friends, on the issues. Not only did all of three of them agree, but I got the handshake from the candidate's father to that effect back in late December. And when my opponent started push polling and then subsequently started attacking my character in mail pieces, I went back to them and I said, remember, we had an agreement not to do blasphemous, slanderous attack ads on each other's character. And they agreed and that they would stop. Subsequent to that, my opponent has not only insisted on violating his promise and his word to us in our campaign, but he has upped the ante. And the issue that my opponent is trying to raise is the issue, John Michael, of what's called per diems. And I would like to share what that is for a second.
Sure, go ahead.
It's very, very important. There are 132 members of the Tennessee General Assembly. There are 99 House members and 33 Senate members. Every single one of them, by law, a law that was there long before I was elected in 2008, receive the following types of compensation for their services to the state of Tennessee. They first receive a salary. And when I was up there, that salary was, I don't know, about $18,000, $19,000, $20,000 a year. I think it's a little higher than that because of inflation.
Well, and one of the things that we know about the Tennessee legislature is, A, that it does not meet year-round, and that those who are elected are really citizen legislators.
That is true. And so their salary is reflective of that. So they get a $20,000 salary, plus or minus. They get a $1,000 office allowance. They get they get gas mileage, travel into the Capitol, and they get what's called a per diem. And so each one of and they get health insurance. So these are all the ways that a legislator is compensated as a state employee by the citizens of Tennessee. I will say this. When you're in session right now, like Representative Tillis and Representative Marsh and all the state senators, when you're in session, you work about 60, 65 hours a week. I know you're only up there 3 or 4 days a week, but the work is you get up early and you stay late. And I think each one of those gentlemen would testify that it can be a very long week. When you're out of session, because of the work in the district, you can work 25, 30, 35 hours a week. So it's very difficult if you've got a regular job. But having said that, my opponent says that I took per diem that I shouldn't have taken. The fact of the matter is, in the 6 years that I was in the Tennessee General Assembly, and you can look this up on the Tennessee website, my average per diem per year was a little over $15,000 a year. That's a fact. Just this last year, to draw a comparison, just this last year in 2017, Senator Tracy, for the first 10 months of 2017, took $30,000 in per diem. Representative Marsh took a little over $21,000 in per diem. And Representative Tillis took over $19,000 in per diem. And again, I averaged a little over 15. Now, I am in no way saying that those three gentlemen didn't qualify and ethically earn the per diem that was due to them because of state law. What I'm saying is there's another side of the story that my opponent, who's consistently lied about my record and now lies about this, is displaying in these mail pieces. And I appreciate the opportunity to explain it because, quite honestly, it's a fabrication and a totally untrue assertion.
All right. Our guest on Straight Talk is Joe Carr, a candidate for the state Senate in the election that is ongoing. And, of course, as I mentioned earlier, early voting has been completed here in Marshall County. And the election itself, if you haven't already voted, is this Thursday. Get over to your local polling place at, the Hardison Office Annex here in Lewisburg and a number of other locations about Marshall County. We'll be back to talk with a candidate for that state Senate seat, Joe Carr, after this word. Guest on Straight Talk is Joe Carr, a candidate for the vacated state Senate seat. And I want to ask you about this immigration issue because obviously it's a big issue nationally. And, of course, you mentioned Nashville not being a sanctuary city.
Right.
I get the sense that the federal government is starting to take their cues from local governments and from state governments on this issue. What's your sense on that?
Yeah, that is the sense. And a lot of that comes from we've got a new president who now believes in Donald Trump, by the way, who I supported during his election. And the reason is because of his stance on illegal immigration. As a matter of fact, when he ran for president in the primary, a lot of what he believed and what he said was, you know what, the way we solve our immigration crisis is through the enforcement of our existing laws. And on top of that, let's build a wall to help us enforce the laws. We don't, John Michael, we don't need more laws. What we need is we need an executive branch and a Congress and a judicial branch that will enforce the laws, just like we have in Tennessee, the no sanctuary city laws. You saw Nashville try to usurp the authority of state law by passing an ordinance, and their own legal director struck that down. And so when Trump defers to the states, he sees the states taking a big lead in this because those states, especially those states on the border and states like Tennessee and Alabama and Missouri who have passed good, comprehensive illegal immigration laws, he sees them as helping him lead the way to fight this fight. And quite honestly, it's the right thing to do. It truly is. And I'm fully in support of his efforts in this and glad that he's making it an issue.
Jobs have been an issue here in Marshall County as well, yeah. And your predecessor in this position, Senator Tracy, has been instrumental, of course, with Assemblyman Tillis in bringing new industries here to Marshall County and to the district. What do you plan to do along those lines?
Well, I'm going to plan to use the same work ethic that I used when I was a state representative, when I helped bring Amazon, a large Amazon facility to the eastern part of Rutherford County. When I helped pass and implement a $40 million Votech Work Center at Nissan to help train new employees for Nissan in the automotive industry in Mechatronics. Those are the kinds of things that we need to do. And so much of what industry is looking for, I was having this conversation with some community leaders down in Lincoln County long ago, so much of what community leaders are looking for in the way of infrastructure is a job-ready workforce. And that is the biggest impediment to rural development and jobs. But it's just not enough, John Michael, and this is very, very important. It's just not enough to bring jobs to Marshall County. What we have to do is we have to bring high-paying jobs to Marshall County. It does no good to the economy if we bring a lot of $8, $9, $10 jobs to Marshall County. What we need is we need to lift the median average job earner in Marshall County so that income then is a rising tide that lifts all boats in that developing and growing economy.
That was, of course, a buzz phrase during the Reagan administration that a rising tide raises all boats.
That's exactly right.
All right. My guest on Straight Talk this morning has been senatorial candidate Joe Carr, running for the state Senate seat vacated by Jim Tracy back in November. And thank you for joining us this morning on Straight Talk. Once again, a reminder that the election is this Thursday, the 25th. Early voting has ended, and I'm sure a lot of people, despite the weather that we've had here, came out and voted early. But if you haven't yet voted in this special election, please get out Thursday and do so.
Judge, if I could just real quick,
Sure.
I want to thank you for having me on. And yes, please, and your listeners, please go vote this Thursday. And by all means, vote for Joe Carr for State Senate. And John Jay, thank you very much for having me. I look forward to doing it again.
Thank you. We look forward to having you on again, and much success to you in these endeavors.
Thank you much.
All righty.